So in this lesson, we're going to review domain and we're going to review range. So they are just simply the x and y coordinates. The range is the y coordinate and the domain is the x coordinate. So if we look at our order pair that we have here, we have this is our x and this is our y. So our domain are all the x values. So if I identify them, x, 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 so our domain is -3, 0, 1, and 2. And if we look at our range, or the y values, it's the second coordinate. So if I go through that, I have 3, -7, -5, and 4. So I've identified the range and the domain. In this section, we want to identify quadrants. And the quadrants start with upper right-hand corner. This is our quadrant 1. And then we go counterclockwise. So this is quadrant 2, and this is quadrant 3. And then we have finally quadrant 4. And I'm using Roman numerals because that's typically how you see it. So these are all positives. These are negatives and positives. Down here would be your negatives, negatives. And then we finally have our positive and negative coordinates. So this is how you identify quadrants and where a coordinate is. So if I want to name the quadrant that -8 and 5, I look which one is first negative and next one positive. So this would be quadrant 2. Now you could plot the point and go -5. So if I were to go ahead and plot -8, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then go up 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I would see that this point T is located in this quadrant. So you can identify it by actually plotting the point or looking at the quadrants by virtue of their signs, positives, negatives. The next thing we want to be able to do is look at what the point is when you see on a graph. So in this case, we have a -2 and 0 is our coordinate, that's A, and then B would be 0 because we don't go right or left, and then we go up 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the difference between these two is what quadrant are they in when they're not in a quadrant. And so there is no quadrant for either one of these when they are on a line or on an axis. So they're either in the actual quadrant or they are on an axis. Okay, we're going to identify two terms that we need to know the definition of. And the first one is a relation. A relation is simply representing coordinates, our domains and ranges, in 4 different ways. We have what's called ordered pairs, a table, we have a graph, and then we have what's called a mapping. Now, the reason why we want to identify that is then it helps us get to the second term that we want to know the definition of, and that is a function. A function is a special type of relation. It's when the domain is unique. That means the x values do not repeat at all. So we can either look at the different types of relations, and so here's a relation of ordered pairs, and we want to know, is this a function? So we look at the x values, 10, 6, 7, and -8, and they're all different. So this is yes, it is a function. So when we're also looking at here's a table, and this table right here, we want to look just at the x values for a function, and all of them are different, 1, 2, 3, so this is also a function. Now let's look at these other types of relations, and this one is a mapping. So this mapping is a little bit more difficult to tell, so sometimes it might help if you just write it out. So the -3 goes with the -4, so I'm writing it as ordered pairs. 0 goes with a -2, but it also goes with 0. So right there shows that the zeros repeat, which means this is not a function. So basically, if you have the x values that go with 2 different range, then it's not a function. And then the last one is a graph. Here's a relation of a graph. So we want to know if this is a function. And so basically, I'm going to plot the points again. So this first point is a -1, -1. Then this point right here is 0, -3. This point is 1, 0. And this point is 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2. So the x values are all different, so this is a function, but the instructions also say state the domain and range. Well, it's pretty simple in a map. There's our domain and there's our range, but in a graph, we have to identify them. So this right here would be our domain, these numbers, and our range would be these numbers. So writing out what they are helps you to identify domains and range and functions.